Now that you know how to brainstorm, construct, and achieve your goals, how do you tie all of these lessons together? How do you get all of these sales tools together and really make efficient use out of every single one? Our next section is the bow that ties it all together and teaches you how to take all of the sales skills we've taught you and implement them quickly, effectively, and efficiently. It's called Making Quality Sales Calls, and if you're ready to know the ins and outs of making a great call, including pre- and post-call planning, then let's get to it. The 11th module, Making Quality Sales Calls. Lesson 1, Making Quality Sales Calls, the 5 Ps.
The first step in making quality sales calls is making sure that you follow the 5 Ps. Plan, purpose, preparation, presentation, and post-call documentation. So let's break that down. Planning. And we've talked a lot about planning in different modules that you've already listened to or watched. But you need to be thinking in terms of each call having a plan. So every single sales call you make, you should have a plan for that call. You should think out, what is my plan for it? What is the process? What is the questions I'm going to ask? What do I hope to achieve? What is my plan for it? What's my closing questions? Have a plan for every single sales call. We said earlier that you have to have a goal for every call, but having a goal and not having a plan means that you've got limited potential of making it. If you've got a good plan, the plan's consistent with attaining your goal, you can see how that would really move you towards having a successful call that would reach your goal. Purpose. You have to have purpose for every call. And not only should you have a purpose and a goal for the call, but your client, your referral partner, the person you're talking to, should get from your communication, your body language, your languaging, your conversation, that there's truly a purpose in having talked to you. I said earlier that the reason that you would not be a pest in going to see somebody once a week was if you added value. And I think that's part of having a purpose. If they feel like that you brought value to the equation, then they'll feel like that there was a purpose for having talked to you. And that's how you're going to have successful relationships and not have people ducking you or trying not to see you. Preparation, clearly you've got to be prepared. You've got to know what your goal is for the call, and then break that down and look at what my plan is, and then make sure that any of the questioning you're going to use, the objections you're going to handle, the closing questions, anything else, that you've prepared that in advance. And not only have you prepared it, but you're comfortable that you've role-played it and it works. You know, it comes out of your mouth, and it comes out of your mouth easily and smoothly and sounds like you. So you've got to be well prepared. Then your presentation. We're going to talk more in a minute about your presentation, but you really need to look at how you craft your presentation. If I'm going to present a solution to this particular referral partner on this call, I need to have thought through that in advance. I need to have a logical sequence to it. We said that we're going to bring them back and tell them what the benefits are, and why it is that we're talking about this, the needs that they've shared with us in the past. And then we're going to have a logical sequence, and we're going to make sure that we're prepared by having any printed materials, anybody else you may need to take with you, a nurse or a social worker or a chaplain or whomever it might be, and that you're totally prepared to make a really good presentation. And then finally, the last P, the 5th P, is post-call documentation. And that's critical to making sure that you track what happened on this call, really get whatever data you had, whatever information that you were able to get that may have been one of your goals for the call, and then what am I going to do on the next call? And every single call, immediately following it, you need to sit in your car or wherever and go down and do your post-call documentation. Do not wait until the end of the day. By the end of the day, you will not remember or retain half of the stuff that you need to keep track of. So, post-call documentation immediately following the call will make sure that you trap all the information, you don't lose any information, and you're ready for that next call the next time you're going there. And then I guess the other thing I would say, in addition to, the 5 Ps, which clearly makes sense as far as being ready to go and at the top of your game for every sales call, was, don't spend a lot of time making social calls. Again, we should have a goal and a purpose for every call. And if my purpose is to go by and say hi or be friendly or, God forbid, drop off muffins, then I don't have that purpose. Now, if you are dropping off something, then that could be an excuse to be there or something nice to add to it. But your purpose in being there should never be to deliver a giveaway. Let's say you're distributing calendars towards the end of the year for the next year. And if you're distributing calendars and your purpose in making the calls on those days is to hand out calendars, then shame on you, because you're missing a real opportunity. I mean, what are the things you could tie into a conversation around calendars? But you should have a purpose for those calls and a goal for those calls, and the calendar is just an add-on. So remember, always when you're making quality sales calls, and we're big believers in quality over quantity. So we want to have high quality sales calls, not how many people we can see, but how high of quality of those calls. So use the 5 Ps, always plan, have purpose, prepare make sure you're well prepared, prepare your presentation, and then post-call documentation, and you will have much more successful calls.
Lesson 2, following up and saying thank you.
Let's talk a little bit about the importance of following up. One of the things that I believe that hospice as an industry is bad at is follow-up in general. Certainly from our referral center, mission department, customer service center, whatever you call yours, they should be really good at following up. If once we have someone contact us for information about hospice, they should be following up. The same goes for you, and I think that you as the salesperson, you as the hospice sales professional, have to be a leader in your organization and really help others be good at following up. So what does that mean in your job? Well, number one, when you make your call and you're doing your post-call documentation, figure out what it was you committed to. And one of the things that is helpful to really moving your process along is coming up with things that you can commit to as follow-up. So simple things. The simplest of examples would be that you talk to them about putting your brochures in their lobby or waiting room, because you see other ones there and ours isn't. Okay, don't go out to the car and bring it in. Promise them that you'll be back the next week and you'll swing by, you'll check with them before you put this out in the lobby. And then you have a reason to be there the next time, an excuse, but more importantly, you've established a promise and you've fulfilled it. So that's really good follow-up. So sometimes you have to create things to really provide the follow-up. But another way that you can really be good at follow-up is thinking about how we're going to say thank you. Now, in our world today, a handwritten thank you note is still very powerful because people don't write. People send emails. People use voicemails. So a well-placed handwritten thank you note can be very powerful as a follow-up. And especially if you had a first meeting with someone that went really well, thanking them in that fashion always will make you show up in a better light. But be careful with how you use handwritten follow-up or thank you notes, because if you send them to the same person over and over again, it starts looking like it's just mechanical and it's really not heartfelt. So pick your spots, and if you're going to send a thank you note, write it immediately after the call and drop it in the first mailbox you see, so that it's on the way right away. They get it quickly. If you have multiple towns in your territory, it'll be postmarked in their town and it'll be on their desk the next morning. So, that's one way to say thank you. But you should come up with any number of ways to say thank you. Obviously, you should be able to go in and thank them in person. You should be able to call them and thank them. You should get your senior management team involved. If we have really active referral partners that send us a lot of business, we should be in contact with them on a regular basis. The CEO should call and say, you know what, we really appreciate you trusting us with your patients. Is there anything we can do for you? But thank you. If maybe the clinical director or someone in your referral center, but find different people who can say thank you to those accounts. If it's just you, every referral you go by and say thank you for the referral, thank you for the referral, thank you for the referral, it loses its power pretty quickly. But if you can vary it and use the handwritten notes, use the calls from senior management, take somebody from senior management out there with you, take the person who sits in the referral center and takes all the referrals that they call in, take them out to meet them, one-on-one. All of that says, thank you, we care, and we value your business. And it's just good business and it's good follow-up. And one of the things in your account profiling is you want to keep track of what you're doing to follow up. Keep track of what you did to say thank you for different accounts so that it doesn't become duplicative or become redundant and not have the power that you're going to expect it to have. So find ways that you can follow up and then make sure you get credit for it. Much like my belief that as an industry, we don't do enough to get credit for the great things we do. We do incredible things on a daily basis, but we've always kind of done them quietly and in the background and never gotten full credit for that. So you have to be good at your follow-up, but make sure that you're visible with the follow-up. You have tangible ways to demonstrate the follow-up, and then make sure you get credit for it. So make promises that you can fulfill, and then fulfill them and make sure that the referral partner or prospective referral partner understands and sees that, because what it will do is it builds trust faster, which will shorten that sales cycle. So be good at your follow-up, be good at your follow-up, never forget to follow up.
Lesson 3, pre-call planning and post-call documentation.
In some of the different lessons, we've talked about and alluded to the importance of documenting your calls, the pre-call planning, the execution of the call, and the post-call documentation. So I want to talk a little bit more in detail there. And clearly, all of this dovetails back into you having a master plan. You've planned your month, you've broken down your week, you've got your plan for the account, you have the process, the steps, and what you're going to do. So in your pre-call planning, you want to, when you're looking at the week ahead, you want to go through and think about all of those calls you're going to make, and then make sure that you have any materials that you might need to make the calls. Make sure that you've got any sales sheets, brochures, or anything else that you might need. If you made a commitment to get a piece of information, perhaps you promised that you would check on the status of a patient, make sure that you've got that, because what you don't want to have happen is end up in the field, show up at where you're going to make the call, and then look and realize you don't have what you need to either fulfill a commitment or a follow-up, or to really be effective in that sales call. So make sure that you've pre-call planned for the week ahead, and then in the morning, look at your calls for the day, go through that same process. What do I need? What's going to happen? Make sure that you're prepared in advance. When you get to the call, you pull up to wherever they're located, you're in your car, you get off of your desktop, you pull your profile sheet, and you review the account profile, and you review what happened in the last call and what your follow-up was going to be and what your next steps were. Okay? Then you're ready to walk through the door. Before you walk through the door, however, stop and make sure you're clear on why you're there. What is my goal? What is my purpose? Why am I here? And you need to think through that right before you darken their doorway so that you're clear on it. At that point, just before you open the door, take a deep breath, put a smile on your face, and then go in and make an exceptional call. Now you've made your call. During the call, you're going to take notes of the salient points that come up. You're going to document anything there. You're going to make sure that you're listening well. You've asked your questions. You've executed on your plan. You've attained your goal. You've got them to give you a commitment of some sort, right? When we ask a closing question, our goal is that they give us a commitment. It may not be a patient today, but it may be the promise of one tomorrow, or the promise of one on Tuesday. Okay, so you need to get a commitment from them of what they're going to do and then keep track of that. So get to the car, document the call. We like to use a post-call system that is the RCN. Recap, commitment, and what's going to happen the next time. Okay? R for recap. So the first thing I want to do is succinctly recap what happened on the call. Second, I want to list what the commitment was that I got from them in the call. And I want to document this on every call, because that's going to tell me whether I'm asking for the business and getting a commitment. If I can't document a commitment in my post-call note, then it says that I'm not getting a commitment from the account. And if you're struggling with that, then you need to think about it and get a commitment on at least 3/4 of the calls you make. That will definitely power your business and grow your business. If you're not doing it today, that will push you over the top. That will definitely give you a big lift and a big gust of wind in your sales. So we're recapping, we're documenting the commitment, and then in for next time, what's my plan for the next call? What is it that I'm going to do on the next call? Today I found out that the CHF patients are just a nightmare for them. I told them I could fix that for them. The next call, I'm going to come in, I'm going to present our CHF program and the benefits to them as a solution to their uncovered needs. Okay, so then I'm going to document that, and then whatever follow-up needs to happen. So that's your process, and on every call. Now, here's the pushback we get sometimes. We have sales reps to say, you just don't understand what I'm doing, what my job is. I don't have time to be doing all that documentation. I've got to go a lot of different places. I'm always jammed for time. I'm in a hurry. I don't have time to sit before the call and review my notes, and then after the call and write everything out. Well, here's the deal. If you want to be effective, you'll take the time. And I can promise you, if you actually put a stopwatch on it, you're talking about maybe 30 to 60 seconds to document the call. We're not talking a long time here. You will work out your own shorthand, your own abbreviation, if it's an electronic system, however you're going to do it there. But I can promise you that you'll be so much more effective that whatever time it does take you is time really well spent. And also, what I always notice, or it seems like every time when we get that pushback, it's the reps who are struggling to make their numbers. It's the reps that are not doing the planning. They don't have a good solid plan. So that's why it is uncomfortable for them to do, the pre-call planning and the post-call documentation, because they don't have a plan in the first place. And in many cases, they're just out there talking to people about hospice and hoping to make friends and hoping that somebody will send them a patient. So we find that when we get the pushback on that, usually that tells us that it's a rep that's struggling, and they're struggling with being organized, having a good plan, and executing. So if you're struggling with it, then think about why. Because it's not the amount of time it takes to do it. It's that you're not wanting to be accountable, or you're not wanting to be organized, or you just don't have a good plan. And I cannot overemphasize the importance of having a really good plan, because that will make you much more successful than the salesperson who has no plan.
Lesson 4, presentations and lunches.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about doing quality presentations. And I think I promised you in this section I'd also talk a little bit about doing lunch presentations. Now you notice I said lunch presentations. If you're going to do a lunch, you better have a reason for doing it. So don't just say we're going to give lunch to somebody to take them lunch, because that truly is going to be a waste of your time, energy, and resources. But let's step back a little bit. We're going to talk generically about any kind of presentation you may make. Now this could be a presentation to a big group. It could be to a small group. It could be to a medium-sized group. It could be to one person. But the first thing you need to define is who needs to be there. Who needs to be in the audience? And then make sure you get a commitment that they're going to be there. If you're taking lunch into a physician practice, and the whole idea is that you can get some face time with the physician, then you better get a commitment that that's going to happen, that the physician's going to be there. So you want to do your homework on that. We'll come back to that. Know exactly what it is you're going to be presenting. Many times, we see reps who document or tell us, say, well, what did you do in that presentation? You said you had a great lunch with a group. What did you talk about in that lunch? Oh, I did an overview of services. An overview of services? What, are you kidding me? Are you going to tell them everything that a hospice does in about 10 minutes and have them feel like that you brought them something of value? Do you not think that every other hospice that's called on them has tried to projectile tell them exactly what it is that they do, feature? They're sick and tired of it. Don't waste your time or your energy. Make sure that you have a good message and a good plan, and you've lasered in on what's important to them. Know what it is that's important to them before you get there. The lunch or the presentation isn't the time to find out what's important to them. That work has to be done in advance. So know exactly what you're going to talk about. Know when's going to be the best time to set this up, when it's set up, when you've got it scheduled, where you're going to be doing it. And let me say one thing about that. Especially if it's to a big group, you want to see personally, not have it described to you, where you're going to be doing your presentation. Because that's going to impact your approach and what you're going to bring with you and how you're going to handle it. So make sure you know where it's going to be and exactly what kind of a situation it's going to be in. And then last, I think on that list is know why you're doing it. Why am I doing this presentation? And the why should give you an answer that supports your overall goals, that supports what you're doing and why you're doing it. If you can't answer the question, why am I doing this presentation, then you probably shouldn't be doing it. So again, know who needs to be there, exactly what you're going to talk about, when and where it's going to be, and most importantly, why you're doing it. Now, if we're talking about scheduling, if I'm doing a big presentation to a group, and especially if I'm doing a luncheon presentation or a breakfast presentation, I want to schedule it far enough out in advance, at least 6 weeks out. If you go in and, many lunches are booked because you walk in and the lady at the front says, oh, when you ask who calls in the referrals for hospice, the answer is you have to bring lunch. You've got to make a decision right there on the spot. Do I want to commit to bringing lunch? Do I know enough about where I am to feel comfortable that if I could prevail here, there's some business to be had? In which case, you can book the lunch. If they want you to come tomorrow or next week, politely decline. Let them know that your schedule is really tight, you're really busy, and you're booking 6 or 8 weeks out. Have your calendar with you so you can go through it with them and find a day. Okay? But you need to also be able to, at that point, make sure that the doctors are going to be there or the key people. But make it far enough out in advance because you want to do your homework and make sure that this is going to be the right place for you to bring this presentation, this lunch or breakfast. Because if it isn't, you're going to cancel it. What we know is that when you do lunches, you're committing at least 4 hours of your time. Presentations are the same way. Major presentations could take much more time than that and a lot of preparation. So make sure that it's the right place and the right time and that you're going to get the value for your investment, which again, your biggest resource is not the cost of doing it, but your time. So now that you've booked the lunch, let's go keep on with that scenario there because this is what we hear a lot of questions about. And again, we're not proponents of taking lunch or breakfast or anything else out there. We're proponents in bringing added value, but we're also realistic. And we know that there are certain places that you may be able to get in easier with lunch. If your organization, however, has policies that say we do not do lunches, then I would see how you can use that to your power. Okay? Spin that to your benefit. When they say you have to bring lunch, say, gosh, I'd love to do that. But our organization, our philosophy, our mission is so tied to patient care that we don't feel like that using the Medicare funds to pay for lunches to feed you in your office, nothing against you, is the right thing to do. So I'll have to politely decline on that, but I would like to speak to the person who calls in the referrals. Okay, so use it to your advantage, but don't feel like because you can't take lunch, you're not going to be able to compete, because you can. And sometimes I think that's a blessing. But anyway, let's assume that you do lunches occasionally in the right places. As soon as you book the lunch, ask the person again who calls in the referrals for hospice. Get a name. Ask to see them. If she goes back to, well, you can talk to them when you bring lunch, let them know that that's not going to cut it. That's not how we roll. Okay? We are going to bring you customized presentation, specific information that's going to be of interest and importance to your practice. To do that, I need to know more about your practice. So who may I speak with? Jane, that's the person that calls referrals, and then bite your tongue and let them answer. If they tell you you cannot talk to anyone until you bring lunch, I would cancel lunch on the spot and just explain to them that I'm sorry, but we don't feed a lot of people, and we definitely don't just bring lunch to bring lunch. We're going to bring you important information, and as I explained, I need to be able to talk to someone, talk to multiple people, and find out more about it. Now, there's any number of sales calls you can make between that date and actually bringing the lunch. And my goal would be to get referrals before you ever bring the lunch, because then they're going to have experience with you and you'll be able to talk to specific patients and other specific things, and you're going to have a much more powerful and productive lunch. So don't fall into the trap of getting excited because we booked lunch with some big practice and then not doing anything until you show up, and then showing up and finding out that maybe it was the wrong place to be. So you want to get to that person that calls in the referrals and ask them the questions. Some other calls that you can make is you go by and you want to see where you'll be setting up the lunch. Typically that's somewhere in the back. It gets you in the back again. Look at everything you can do and have a really good, presentation planning sheet, or a luncheon planning sheet, or a breakfast planning sheet that details all of these things that you have to have in place, so you can check them off as you get them and make sure you've done your homework. If it's a large presentation or a large luncheon, make sure you have help. Bring others from your organization to help you work the crowd. If there's going to be a crowd, you need to have a strategy for working that crowd. Who are the key people that we have to talk to, and whose responsibility is that going to be? If you've got 3 people there, divvy up the people and then make sure you keep checking with one another to make sure you've talked to the people you came to see. If by chance you take your presentation in and the physician who you really wanted to get in front of, who you've gotten a commitment from the person that booked the lunch, from other people in the office, that physician would be there, then go to the office manager, go to the person that booked it, let them know how sorry you were that they weren't able to be there, that that was my number one purpose in bringing the lunch in, was to visit with Dr. Bob. When's going to be the best time for me to get about 3 minutes of his time? Go to them immediately. Go to them on site immediately following that and get a commitment, set an appointment. At that point, they have the greatest likelihood of helping you out because they feel like that they owe you. If you wait and come back weeks later, there's no value in that. So book it immediately. Your follow-up, following a luncheon or following a presentation of any kind, is going to be based on the conversation in the presentation, the questions that were asked, the interest that was put forth, and any commitment you got. But start your follow-up immediately. Thank them immediately. Go back in within a couple of days at the most to follow up on the conversations you had, follow up on the commitments you had. They're never going to like you more and remember what you said more than within about 3 days of making the presentation. For that reason, I would avoid making presentations on Fridays. Fridays are a bad day just across the board. A lot of things can happen. You have a lower predictability that you're actually going to get the people there. But a lot of people by lunchtime on Friday are already thinking about the weekend. They're not focusing on what you have to say, and then by definition, there's at least 2 days before you can get back in front of them. So I would think carefully about Friday presentations. On Thursday, you can still swing by either on Friday, but don't be shy about going right back in there. Now, other things that you'll want to cover if you're doing lunches, obviously, is making sure that if there's any special diets or other kind of considerations, what does the office like to eat, things like that. But be careful you don't fall into any of the traps along the way. If they say, oh, we'll call it in, and you just check with us and you can go pick it up, find out where they're going to call in advance. Don't wait until the day of, only to find out that they called a very expensive restaurant and you're stuck with a big tab. Be good about preparing food that's consistent with what they're going to want to eat, but try to do it in a memorable fashion. If you're going to actually invest your time and energy and resources in taking a lunch, make it memorable. Have a tablecloth that fits the season or the purpose or the conversation. If you're talking about, breast cancer or anything like that, take pink tablecloths. Make it memorable. If you're going to take, lasagna from some chain restaurant, which I wouldn't recommend, but if that's what you're going to do, take it and put it in a dish or something that you can get at the dollar store, but at least it's not a tin tray. Make it special, make it memorable. If you can do homemade food, or if you're going to take, any kind of baked goods, make it special. We're totally not in favor of taking donuts out, so don't take this the wrong way. But if you were going to take donuts, don't take it from, some national chain that's just, very common. Find the local bakery and take them something from there. Again, we're not big on baked goods, but if you're going to do it right. Make it memorable. Don't be just one more sales rep dropping off donuts from a national chain or from Walmart. So be careful about that and think through it and have a plan and have it all tie together. The other thing is take notes while you're doing your presentation. If you're not taking the notes, somebody that's with you needs to. The person that's with you, if it's a group, you need them to watch body language. They can watch and figure out who is nodding, who's clearly interested, because those are going to be the people that you're going to want to follow up with, because they clearly got it, or at least were on the same wavelength as you talked. Take notes on anything that you notice, and then be sure that you've got your presentation down cold. Okay? You need to be prepared. If you're presenting to a group and doing 5 minutes on something, have your presentation down cold. Have it planned. Have your opening statement. That's going to recap why you're here doing this, what the issues were that they've identified for you, and how you've helped others, similar to them, eliminate those problems by the use of hospice. Then give them the information about the program, the benefits to them, tie it back then to eliminating their problem or pain, and then ask them for any questions, ask them to commit to give you a try so they can see how it would work there in their own practice. And again, immediately after having done the presentation, start your follow-up. Find the person who helped you book it and go back to them before you leave afterwards and thank them. Thanks so much for inviting me to come speak to your group. Now, you may not have been invited, or you may not felt like you were being invited when they said you got to book lunch to talk to anybody, but let them know, be gracious, make them feel special. Because again, that's an opportunity, and it's an opportunity lost if you don't do it immediately. So plan, present, follow up, get the commitment, and convert your presentation into referrals and hospice admissions. Because if you can't do that, then you're totally wasting your time, energy, and resources by taking lunches or doing presentations. So make your presentations memorable, follow up, get a commitment, and you will be very successful.
Let's talk about what you've just learned. In order to make quality sales calls, you must plan and prepare, stay focused, execute, and follow up. To plan and prepare, remember to plan your objective and develop a pre-call plan that supports that objective. Learn what you can about your customer before calling on them as well, so you can diagram your approach. And always have a secondary objective in mind in case you are unable to accomplish your primary objective. When making a call, stay focused. Make sure you're listening to your customer. While it's important to be prepared, don't make the mistake of answering a customer with something that makes no sense because you didn't listen, but rather because it was in your plan. Execute on your plan and stick to the sales process. Plans are great, but if you don't execute, they're not effective. And remember to follow up. Have a system for tracking your calls and be consistent. After you make a call, capture what you talked about with the customer that was related to progressing the sale, capture anything the customer committed to, and document your follow-up plan. And once you've documented the follow-up, you now have a pre-call plan for next time. After 11 lessons, you now have all the tools you need to go and make amazing sales calls that will boost your referrals and make you a hospice sales superstar. Now, all of that being said, it's not going to happen overnight. You have to keep learning and relearning these same tools and techniques so that you have them down cold and can use each and every skill without thinking about it. It's going to take hard work and dedication, and we will help guide you with these last 2 sections. If you're ready to learn about the last finishing touches, let's put in the next CD.